with Quincy in 1945, a Maroon win at home and a loss in Champaign, where Moline finished 4th in the state. A number of war-related events were held at Wharton during World War II. Quite a number, as a matter of fact. Included was a 1943 exhibit of war materials manufactured by John Deere at its Moline and East Moline factories. Here's one scene from that event. There's several scenes in the book. In the 1940s and early 1950s, the Tri-City Symphony Orchestra played concerts at Wharton for Moline school children. On Monday morning, May 7th, 1945, 2,500 boys and girls listened intently to a concert for an hour and 15 minutes. Upon the completion of the concert, the announcement was made that the war in Europe had ended. A wild celebration ensued, and kids streamed out of the arena. With all the noise, most children could not hear the announcement that school would be canceled for the remainder of the day. They probably skipped school anyway. In 1946 and 47, these two circuses visited the field house. The fine print in the advertisement on the right includes this: positively the greatest array of circus stars ever assembled, high wire, trapeze, acrobats, monks, chimps, and clowns galore. And it points out that Professor Keller's was to bring his jungle that included killers, lions, tigers, panthers, pumas, elephants, and hyenas. Must have been great fun. A barnstorming female basketball team, the All-American Redheads, appeared at Wharton in 1947 to deliver some basketball comedy antics and play men's rules against a local team from the K Plumbers. The Redheads were led by Hazel Walker, who at the time was called Miss Basketball. Walker's team lost to the Plumbers, but Walker defeated plumber Mel Montz at the free throw line. She sank 15 consecutive shots and added 5 more in a row on her knees. Mr. Montz made only 13 of 15. In the late fall of 1946, the professional Buffalo Braves moved to Wharton to become the Tri-Cities Blackhawks. This January 2nd, 1947 photograph shows Coach Nat Hickey and player Nick Grunzweig with 7-footer Don Otten jumping, at the Blackhawks' first practice. Hickey and Grunzweig were wearing Buffalo Bison uniforms because the Blackhawks uniforms had not yet arrived. The Blackhawks played their first 3 seasons in the National Basketball League against teams such as the Oshkosh All-Stars, Waterloo Hawks, and the Fort Wayne Zollner Pistons. Some African Americans had played in the NBL for very short periods in the early 1940s, but it was not until 1946-47 that 2 African Americans played full seasons. Pop Gates of the Blackhawks was one of them. This actually predates the first African American player to join the baseball major leagues. Jackie Robinson did not play for the Brooklyn Dodgers until the spring of 1947. Some of you remember this. This photograph of the Blackhawk team is about 8 feet wide. It hung for many years in downtown Moline taverns. Today it's displayed at the Wonder Why Tap on 16th Street, just 4 blocks from Wharton Fieldhouse. Featured on the left is Billy Hassett, and on the right, Whitey Bonita. While the Blackhawks were playing there, this cubicle scoreboard was installed at Wharton Fieldhouse in the summer of 1949. It was one of the first of this type to be used in any arena. The Blackhawks were charter members of the National Basketball Association, the NBA, in 1949, and played 2 seasons in that league before moving to Milwaukee. Red Auerbach, shown here at the Fieldhouse, coached the Blackhawks during the 1949-50 season, then went on to a legendary career as coach of the Boston Celtics. In 1948, the city of Moline Centennial was celebrated. Events were held over 6 days. Numerous activities were at Wharton Fieldhouse, including a fashion show and 2 nationwide radio broadcasts. It's time for another quiz. Everybody still with us? Now, this is an easy one, okay? What's the name of Gene Autry's horse? Not Trigger. The consensus seems to be Champion. So let's see. And sure enough, in 1949, Champion visited the Fieldhouse and brought along with him Gene and some other humans. Also in 1949, Joe Louis, heavyweight boxing champion since 1937, appeared in an exhibition match. Now, this book is full of interesting stories told to us by a variety of people. And both Diane and Elizabeth warned me not to give away all the good stories.
There's a lot, there's still not
But
told.
I won't give away the good stories, but here's one of the better ones. This was told to me by Milt Johnson, who grew up in Moline. Some of you know him. Milt and three of his teenage buddies had become accustomed to sneaking into the Fieldhouse for amateur boxing matches. They would simply knock on the window of a locker room, and someone inside would open the window and let them slip in through the narrow opening. So naturally, the lad showed up on the night of the Joe Louis fight and knocked on the window. A gruff-sounding gent said, "What do you want?" They replied, "Oh, we just want to come in and watch some boxing." The gent said, "Go around the front and buy a ticket." After mentioning that they had no money, Milt heard a voice coming from the other side of the locker room. "Let the boys in." It was Joe Louis himself. He was seated, having his hands wrapped in the dressing room. And after slipping into the room, Milt looked at Louis and thought to himself, "He's the biggest man I've ever seen in my life." Professional wrestling, as some of you know,
Gorgeous George.
was very popular at the Fieldhouse from the 1950s through the 1980s. One of the first big names to appear was Gorgeous George, who in 1950 took on George Temple from Hollywood, brother of film star Shirley Temple. The caption from this Argus photograph reads in part, "Although he visited a hairdresser yesterday afternoon, Gorgeous George didn't derive any extended benefit from the treatment. Gorgeous, his golden locks in wild disarray, flips George Temple over as they maul each other on the floor." Among the most memorable and lasting offerings at Wharton Fieldhouse were the Easter sunrise services, held each year from 1948 through 1973. These services would start at either 5:45 or 6 a.m. The first one in 1948 attracted 5,800 worshipers, and in later years upwards of 6,000 would attend. For the water follies, the world's largest portable stage and pools were set up on the Fieldhouse floor. It's a little hard to imagine. Together, the two pools held 80,000 gallons of water. The Strangler visited both the Fieldhouse and downtown Rock Island in January 1955. Speaking of wrestlers, one of the most popular pro wrestlers was Vern Gagne, who visited here many times. Here is Gagne proudly posing with Ben McAdams of Moline at the 1996 NCAA wrestling meet at Williams Arena in Minneapolis.
Which one's Ben?
Where our copy editor was going through the manuscript and came to this photo, and he noted on that side, which one is, I think he said, which one is Vern, or did he say which one is Ben? And he was correct in pointing out that I didn't make that distinction in the caption, so we fixed it. Okay. These two advertisements appeared side by side in the March 1st, 1956 issue of the Argus. They represent two rather different kinds of offerings at the Fieldhouse. Victor Borge of piano comedy fame, and Bill Haley in the Comets of rock and roll fame. One of the more unusual shows, Captain Kangaroo came in 1959 to perform with the Tri-City Symphony Orchestra. This Argus photograph shows 3-year-old Molly Millette of Burlington, Iowa, at the concert with her mother. Mrs. Millette was quoted as saying, quote, "This appearance of the beloved captain was the only thing Molly talked about for weeks." In May 1959, the Miss Illinois Beauty Pageant was held at the Fieldhouse. Miss Moline, 20-year-old Suzanne Johnson, was crowned Miss Illinois by the reigning Miss America. As a special feature for you Rock Islanders, in 1959, Rock Island High School opened a large arena, rivaling Wharton in size. An arena seating capacity competition ensued. Both claimed well over 6,000 seats. Jack Dye and George Van Voren, did Jack make it here? Let's see Jack. Good, I can say anything then. Jack Dye and George Van Voren noted that Wharton would accommodate many more people if its seats were as narrow as the seats at Rock Island. According to them, Wharton's seats were 18 inches wide and Rock Island Fieldhouse seats were 16 inches wide. So, we couldn't resist checking this out, so we measured the seats. Indeed, as of January 2013, every seat in the Rock Island Arena is 16 inches wide. I say virtually every seat. Virtually every one at Wharton is 18 inches wide. The current capacity at Wharton is slightly lower than Rock Island's, but if Wharton would be it would be larger if its seats were narrowed to 16 inches. In 1961 visit of Soviet gymnasts prompted dispatch writer Jim Llewellyn to praise both visitors and hosts. Quote, "A champion Russian Olympic gymnastics team and a crowd of some 2,500 in Wharton Fieldhouse did their own parts last night towards breaking down cultural and communication barriers that exist between the two countries. One spoke through the grace, strength, and continuity of motion of a fine performance, and the other responded with goodwill and applause." In the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, many high school games at Wharton attracted well over 6,000 fans. In March 1963, a record high school basketball crowd of 6,538 attended a super sectional tournament game. Rockford-Auburn defeated Aledo 62-51. The town of Aledo could have stuffed its entire population of 3,080 in the Fieldhouse that evening and still left ample room for Auburn fans. 1964 Moline High School game against Iowa City. A naughty little hawk caused this damage to the backboard. Fieldhouse manager Ed Lemon is shown here attending to the matter. But it wasn't the first time. Back in 1957, Moline's Vernon Johnson was the first to shatter a backboard at Wharton. On May 2nd, 1964, the Montana Centennial train stopped in Moline as part of a national tour. Inside some of the cars were displays celebrating Montana history, including Western art, big game trophies, and $1 million worth of gold nuggets. Riding on the train were over 300 Montana residents, which according to the Muscatine Journal included cowboys, cowgirls, Indians, musicians, mule skinners, and state officials. The capstone of the event was an evening gathering at the Fieldhouse where the Montanans entertained the assembled Midwesterners.